resource shortage. You know, so we're here today with this panel to figure out what is it. And so the big dealers are saying, oh, those regulators, they're driving me out of business. I'll be out of business, you know, by October. The lobstermen are saying those big dealers are price gouging. So Melissa Smith is the research management coordinator for the Department of Marine Resources. She oversees the regulatory aspects of fisheries management plans for sea scallops, Atlantic Menhaden, and Atlantic herring. And additionally, she participates on the commissioners as the commissioner's proxy on the Atlantic Heritage Committee, Herring Committee at the Netherlands Fishery Management Council. So I've asked her to give us what's the view of the fisheries biologist and policymaker, what's the science and or policy behind the big catch quotas.
So, it was about in June, I guess, when I initially got the request from the Deputy Commissioner to participate in this meeting, and of course I said yes, because it had to do with fate. That tended to be my purview, and I joked with my cohorts that I'm the bait queen at DMR, because this is my world for at least 6 months of the year. And then drastically, the panel sort of changed in the last minute, and it seems now that we have a different lineup. And so I was struggling a little bit with what details best to present to everyone here, and sort of how would I go about sort of offering the flow of not only what do I look at from a state perspective, but how do I answer the two questions that Searsport had challenged me with. And so to sort of start, obviously I have a presentation, that's just how my brain works, but this is a lot more of an informal setting, and so to make sure that the material, the details that I'm going to cover today, I'm actually going to take a minute and ask if there's any questions first. So any questions relating to science of menhaden and herring, or the management of menhaden or herring? Sir?
With the restoration of the fisheries of the rivers, how much is that influencing, maybe about getting to the time of that influencing the amount of bait that's available?
Okay, so I was not, and this is why I wanted to ask this question before I started. And so with that, I'm going to keep that in the back of my head, and then I'm going to proceed. So I am the manager for both herring and menhaden in the state, and so with that, I would run the day-to-day. So depending on what those daily landings were from our harvesters, myself and another co-worker at ADMR that's the head of the landings program, we would see that information come in. And with that, because herring is not happening just within Maine, but other states participate in this fishery, it then requires sort of a communication between ourselves here in Maine, but also with other stakeholders in other states. And so, just to give the bigger picture, the 30,000 foot view, the herring fishery in the Northeast is separated into multiple management zones. The one that we are most concerned with is the purple one, the management of Area 1A in the Gulf of Maine. One of, I guess, the benefits, or I like to think of it as a benefit, is that in my 12 years of being at DMR, not only have I resided in the management side of the department, but I've also resided in the science side of the department. And so, for about 9.5 years, I was a marine resource scientist within the state, working on lobster, menhaden, and clams, and herring. And so this is a picture of me when I was actually doing volunteer at-sea sampling of small mesh pearls for river herring bycatch in the herring fishery. So, trying to put everything all together. There are multiple gear types within the herring fishery. In Maine, for the most part, the gear type is the traditional purse seine, and there also is midwater trawling. Midwater trawling would not be allowed in the purple area of 1A until October 1. And so, Tuesday, However, the fishery currently right now is in a pause, and so we do not know when fishing will resume at this point in time. So just the sort of the background of the landings history. Currently right now, this data is only preliminary to 2018, so we don't have 2019 because it's currently happening right now. You can see that for the gray bars that are sort of illustrating the pounds landed, the pounds landed have been going down since about 2014. Now, take this with a grain of salt. These are pounds landed in the state of Maine. A fisherman from Maine can surely go out in the area 1A, harvest his fish, and if he wants to, he can land in New Hampshire, or he can land in Massachusetts. So it's not a direct tie of landings in the state to what the quota is available for the harvesters to actually catch. And so the complicated nature of herring is that it's actually managed by more than just one entity. It's more than two entities. Within the state waters, so anything that's up to 300 miles, that is more so for state of Maine as their control, and that's where we sort of focus our regulations, in addition to regulations out to the EEZ. The New England Fisheries Management Council, which is a council that is under the purview of the Magnuson-Stevens Act, they focus on areas 1B, 2, and 3. And this organization focuses on setting the quota, so the specifications package, and they also look at, aside from that annual catch, how do we figure out the map that gives us that quota? And so the New England Fisheries Management Council also ties into the actual, fisheries service, Fishery-Science Center, and the stock assessments that are associated with herring. The Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, the acronym is wrong, is an area that is a quasi-federal institution. It's based on a compact since 1942 that allows for interstate cooperation among the 15 coastal states stemming from Maine to Florida. And that organizing body has a focus on Area 1A, because that includes state waters. And it also has a focus on the spawning aspect of herring within those state and federal waters within Area 1A. So the science. Where do you think the science comes from for herring? This is more fun if I ask you guys questions too. Has anybody seen a Maine DMR truck going up and down the road at oars, with a little hatch on? So the science literally does come from our oars, from our samplers, and from our fishermen. So Maine has one of the longest actual trends of data collection for herring in all of the northern states. We actually started our program in 1967, which is pretty phenomenal. Our sampler, James Becker, has been operating the port side sampling program for about 15 plus years right now. And he actually coordinates with the captains when they're coming into port 24 hours a day. I remember sampling at 2 o'clock in the morning in New Bedford. And that coordination with the captain allows him to meet the boat at dock and sample the entire catch. That data that he collects from that captain, from that catch, allows us to get the OLIS for aging. It allows us to take a subsample of those fish to get a length and a weight. And if it's during spawning season, it also allows us to do a spawn assessment to see what stage of those females are in their spawning process. So not only does Maine DMR do that port site sampling, but so does Massachusetts DMF, Department of Marine Fisheries. There is a coordination between DMR and DMF so that not two samplers don't go in the same boat, they try to spread them out so that we can get a greater sampling of the fleet. And then that's sort of a fisheries dependent. We are depending on captains to come back to port, communicate with us, and to have a sample. There is also fisheries independent data, and so has anyone here heard of the Maine, New Hampshire Inshore Trawl Survey? Thank you, you're great. So the Maine has been operating for almost 20 years now in partnership with New Hampshire, an inshore trawl survey. When you think of the Bigelow and the federal survey boats, that assessment is happening a little more offshore. And so it's not coming into the nearshore waters, so you're putting this out of some of those species, those compositions of what animals are in those areas of the water, and some of those particulars. And so Maine has a complementary inshore trawl survey that's been operating for 20 years. So that is actually used in the stock assessment for herring, along with some of the other federal science surveys. And so all of this information gets assembled every 3 years. There's a stock assessment. And I say stock assessment because it's sort of like a unicorn. It's a long process. It utilizes the best available science stemming back for long periods of time. So it could be up to 30 years, 40 years, depending on what indices those scientists are choosing to use in their models. We just had one come out in June of 2018, and this was the one, I think, that sort of started this roller coaster of the question, what state are we in for bait? Are we in a crisis? Are we sort of just in a low period? What is happening in the world of herring? There is also the June 2018 stock assessment that was completed by the scientists at the federal government in cooperation with state scientists as well. Ultimately came back with the information saying that the stock was not overfished and overfishing was not occurring. However, there were some changes between the results of the 2018 stock assessment and the one that had occurred 3 years prior in 2015. Two of those most notable items are the amount of adult herring that are capable of reproducing is at a smaller level. So the spawning stock biomass had decreased. So there's been a shrinkage of those adults capable of actually reproducing eggs. Coinciding with this, there has been 5 years of low recruitment. And so when you have a stock, obviously there's a certain amount of fish being removed from that system every year. Having 5 successive years of low recruitment is going to have an impact on your biomass. And so this information was coming out to us around June of 2018. Industry knew it, dealers knew it, lobstermen were starting to hear about it, and this sort of precipitated the start of us having these conversations of what is 2019 going to look like for bait and for Maine. So leading up to the stock assessment, the previous 3 years of an assigned quota for the herring fishery was set at about 100,000 metric tons. But if you go and look at what those landings were individually within the boxes of management zones or even as a total fishery, harvesters were not actually catching up to their allotted amount. So the quota was available, but it wasn't actually being landed. Coinciding with low landings, last year the New England Fisheries Management Council was working on an action that they had started in 2015 that just finished up last September. And that action was looking at how can we produce a harvest rate, a harvest control rule, a math problem, where we allow this amount of fish to be taken for fishing, but we allow this amount of fish to stay in the ecosystem for the birds, for tuna, for stripers, that ecological forest foraging component. And resulting from that action in September of 2018 was a decision by the council to not harvest the maximum sustainable yield of herring, but to do 80% of it. And so to leave that 20% in the water for the environment. And so you have a stock assessment that is saying there's been no recruitment and the amount of biomass for spawning adults is down. You have a couple years where they were not able to land their full quota. And then you have a management action that is purposefully leaving more fish in the water for the sake of the environment. And so all of these factors combined to result in 2019 having a lower catch. So this top table is a snapshot. NOAA has a monitoring website. You can go on and check to see where we are in our landings. They typically update every Thursday. And so as of right now, we have 64% of this year's available quota harvested. So we have 3 more months to go. So, fishing is probably still going to occur in Area 1A, so just off the our coast. And there's also still harvesting available on Jordan's Bank. So we've already taken a regulatory action to set what those quota numbers are going to be in 2020. Still waiting for that federal rules to come out. Looking at Area 1A, this year we're at just over 4,100 metric tons. We are waiting for the final rule, but the final rule is going to also have a decrease once again for fishing year 2020. I don't have the exact number on hand, but it's going to be, I think, below 3,000 metric tons. So in the process of dealing with the management, dealing with the science, there has been a decision at the federal level, at the council, to now update stock assessments every 2 years as opposed to having every 3 years. And so while there's still a data lag, obviously it takes up to a year to have data both from the science side of things and also from catch reporting to make it into the system, to be assessed, to be checked. We are now going to be working on at least an operational assessment update every 2 years so that we can get data a little more quickly and so that we can make management decisions a little more relevant to what the science is saying. So before I head into Menhaden, this is now 2 years in a row where anecdotally a lot of captains, both for herring and also for lobster, have been seeing sardines in our water. The 6-inchers are starting to come in. This was my first year in which fixed gear harvesting, so gear fishing in Costco Bay and Eastport, has started to come back. So those 5 years of not having any recruitment means that there's no small fish. If there's no small fish, there is no fixed gear fishing in coastal cities and towns and villages in Maine. In 2018 and 2019, we have been seeing sardines, and that resurgence or that re-interest in actually having fishing leaders will stop saying is starting to come back. So curious to see if that means that there has been a good recruitment year that might have happened in 2017 or 2018, and see whether or not that interest keeps on going now that there's sardines sort of in what I would consider historical areas so that that practice can resume. And so, Menhaden. How many here have witnessed Menhaden harvesting this year? So I was at a Scholar Public hearing last week, 2 weeks ago in Fisheries. And I had a couple of my fishermen in the audience. These fishermen are not only scallop harvesters, but they're also lobster harvesters as well. And a couple of them were saying, they're in Jonesport, and they went out and got gill nets, and they've been harvesting Menhaden in Jonesport with a gill net. And I was very excited, because I don't know how far these fish are traveling north. And so I asked my harvester, I'm like, so first time in 20 years? First time in 30 years that you've harvested Menhaden again, with a gill net? And he's like, no, first time ever. And so in the last 3 years, 2016 through now, 16, 17, 18, 19, 4 years, every year Menhaden is traveling a little more north. So this is a very old map. I was trying to find a map of the range of Menhaden. Menhaden is one of the few species that actually do run the whole entire east coast. So you can find them in Florida, and you can find them in Maine. When the biomass is contracted, they tend to have sort of like an epicenter around Chesapeake Bay area. But as that biomass increases, they spread out and they travel further. And so what we are seeing right now is a good, healthy biomass. And because of that, they are coming to Maine. Because it's the way life should be. When Menhaden grow, they actually, they are vegetarians, so they only eat phytoplankton, and their gill sets, their gill rakers, as they age and grow up, actually differentiate. And so a juvenile Menhaden to an adult Menhaden are actually eating different species of phytoplankton. So they're eating different food sources. And so this sort of relates into when they're up here, it's a cohort, it's an age cohort that we are seeing. So they tend to school within their age group, and as soon as they get to a certain age, they are able to go farther, travel longer distances. And so typically for us, we get anywhere between age 3 and age 5 or 6. So as I mentioned, it's only been the last 4 years that we've had Menhaden. The last sort of little bit of landings happened around 2008 for about maybe 2 or 3 years. And then prior to that, we're looking at a huge gap, but with landings between, say, 73 and like 1993. But if you would extend back to like the 1800s, rumor has it, the Menhaden fishery started in Maine, and the reduction fishery is how it started. So I would like to think that they're coming to their senses and they're coming home. So just to give the broader overview, because Menhaden do show up in state waters stemming from Florida to Maine, they are managed by the Atlantic States Fisheries Commission. Our commissioner is on the board for that. And there's multiple committees underneath sort of that management framework that work on Menhaden. So in this instance, the science work is done through a technical committee that is made up of state scientists, federal partners. There's a stock assessment that is being actually done right now, and we're looking for an update at early 2020. And this is actually one of the few species that they're actually trying to work out an ecological reference point. And so what is the purpose and what is the importance of Menhaden as a forage fish in our waters, and what do they contribute to the ecosystem as a whole? And is it possible for us to have a model that will tell us what portion needs to stay in for the environment to work, for the ecosystem to work, and then what is an acceptable number for a harvesting rate for those? So that information we are waiting on for 2020. So sort of similar to herring, Menhaden data has been collected for a very long time. So young of the year, so those age ones, surveys have been going on for those since 1959. We have adult abundance surveys separated out from the north sort of portion of their range, southern portion of their range, and those have been occurring since 1980 for the north and 1990 for the south. There's also recreational landings, discards, and bycatch that are sort of assessed through state programs, and that data also feeds into the stock assessment program. And then there's also commercial catch at age. So once again, Maine DMR has someone out, they will contact the fisherman, they will meet the fisherman on the boat, they will grab a sample. We do a little processing of those samples here, but the actual aging of Menhaden happens at Beaufort Marine Lab in North Carolina, and they actually are aging the scales, not the otoliths. So the most recent stock assessment 2017, not overfishing is not occurring. The stock is below the fishing mortality rate, and so once again, fishing is not optimizing the amount of harvest that they can have. And there was a notable recruitment event in 2016, which might be a cause as to why we are seeing such good numbers coming to Maine right now. So as I mentioned, 2020 early is what we are waiting for their update on the assessment. So currently right now, Maine has an allocation based on a regulatory management FMP that was put in 2017. We went from 176,000 pounds in 2017 to being able to harvest 2.4 million pounds in 2018. And that also stayed true for 2019 as well. There's also the episodic event set aside. This allows Maine to take part in a program with 4 other states. So if a huge amount of biomass comes into our state waters, we can apply to continue to fish, which we have in the last 3 years, to harvest to Menhaden at a certain rate. And so from a coast-wide perspective, the entire coast has a cap that is set, and it is expected for this information to also be updated in 2020. So, where does that put us? We knew from the stock assessment in June of 2018 that we were going to be in a deficit of 51 million pounds of herring. And that was a really harsh and drastic decrease, especially when you consider the lobster fishery in the state of Maine. And so a lot of planning and preparation sort of come about, both in the fall of 2018 and then moving into the winter of 2019. And some of that planning and preparation included bait dealers getting hard baits, so getting in frozen rockfish, getting in other species that they could from either Alaska, from the Gulf of Mexico, from Canadians. And then also you had individual harvesters, from a lobster perspective, going out and buying their own freezers and securing their own bait needs. At least have a little bit sort of, in the background. A lot of lobster harvesters also decided to delay setting their gear. And then as this year progressed, the Menhaden arrived. They arrived a little early, but they still arrived. To this date, we have landed approximately 13 million pounds, so still not reaching that 51 million offset, but it resulted in fishermen sort of changing their business plans. Some didn't set their gear until August because they were busy fishing for Menhaden in July. There were some that chose to do a little bit of fishing for Menhaden, and then every 3 days they would check their traps, and then they would go back fishing for Menhaden. And so this was sort of how decisions were being made as this year progressed. So this is part of my credentials slide, raising a fishing boat. So some of the aspects of this year is that we knew that it was going to be a tough year. We did not know what was going to happen with regards to bait. We didn't know how everyone was going to assess the situation, how they were going to change their decision-making process. It's been great that Menhaden was here, but the one thing that we could not anticipate, because we don't have a crystal ball, is that we didn't realize that the lobster shed was going to be late. Because, everyone just assumes that, come July 1, the lobsters are going to start picking up. And it was July 15th, and they're not quite picking up. And it was August 1st, and they still weren't picking up. And so, how do you prepare for the unknown of when the lobsters might start moving in relation to what you need as a harvester for bait, but also how do you regulate fisheries to speed up or slow down when you are trying to figure out what that bait need really is in real time. And that is something that we had to roll the punches this entire season. So with that, I will stop and I'll take any quick questions.
So we'll do everyone. Perfect. chief at National Fisherman, so shameless plug. We have the photo collection, the archives of that magazine. It's the National Fisherman is the periodical of record for the fishing industry. So it's great to have Jessica because she gets to speak for the industry side, the bait dealers, the lobstermen, the fishermen, the bait fishermen. So she has that amazing credential. She's been covering the fishing industry for the last 13 years. She serves on the Alaska Seafood Marketing Institute's Communications Committee and is the National Fisheries Conservation Center board member.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me here. This has been really great, and thanks, Melissa. That was a fantastic presentation, a great update. So I don't want to present myself as a bait specialist. That's certainly not what I do. I'm not an expert in bait, but I can give a sort of a broad picture on the industry and fisheries in general. I don't have a special presentation. I just have some thoughts to share. You know, as Melissa was saying, this year lobster landings are down, effort has been down, and that happens to have coincided with the bait crisis, which turns out not to have been as much of a crisis as anticipated because of reduced effort. And what I've heard from a lot of fishermen is that it didn't matter what they were using for bait this year, they weren't catching lobsters. So, I mean, they were using pig hides, they were using pogies, Gulf of Maine, Menhaden, Gulf of Mexico, Menhaden. Some fishermen were using frozen bait because they were using longer soak times because they didn't really find it advantageous to go out and check their traps as often. And nobody's really is catching as much as they had hoped this year. So I think that was an interesting climatic coincidence, and I do think that it helped overall with the bait issue. So the demand for bait was down, but that also means that the fishermen haven't been making as much money as they expected to, but that also didn't drive the price of the bait up as high as some people were anticipating, which I think was at about triple this year. Is that right?
I think you didn't hear it, about 64 barrel. I've heard a little bit higher than that, depending on where you are.
And depending on what species.
Right. Well, yes, for herring versus Menhaden. I also wanted to say, I'm going to Alaska next week, where I will be meeting some friends who actually do set net in Bristol Bay with their grandmothers, so that's not a bit. That actually happens, and the fish is really spectacular. The Alaska Seafood Marketing Institute's line on that they go out of their way not to disparage farm fish. They see it as an entry point for consumers, and that they just happen to have the premium version of it.
I'm sorry to interrupt. You said 160 for a barrel of bait fish. Is that high? Is that low?
That's high.
That's very high.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that depends on where you're buying it. So I heard down east 140 for a barrel of Menhaden, and like closing in on 300 for a barrel of herring. So that's, I guess, my big picture overview. I don't have, like I said, I don't have any major information to share from fisheries. I think it was pretty succinct this year that their landings are down, and like Melissa was saying, some people were going out fishing for Menhaden to make up for lack of landings in lobster. But I think we're going to see that it's significantly below that 100 million pound mark this year. That would be my guess.
Okay.
I want to ask this question. Do we have one?
I'm going to say the controversial thing and speculate that there are actually higher concentrations in pockets of cod eating the lobster. But I also think you can't discount warming waters. I mean, what I've seen nationwide for fixed gear fisheries is that they've been dealing with
having bigger problems with climatic events than almost anything else.
I sailed up this summer to Papa Labrador. I was talking to all the fishermen I met, and on this, you're probably aware that on the southwest coast of Newfoundland anyway, they have like, their landings of lobster about 3 times what they were a few years ago. They just go through the roof. It's the only fishery there that's booming is the lobster.
Yeah, and their cod is down now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Back then, it was up for a
Yeah,
while.
all the other quotas have been cut, but on that part of the coast going up, the lobster are going crazy.
Yeah. What are the water temps there? Are they cooler?
Yeah, they are, but I can't, I just came back down, I just got been back for about a week and a half, but,
Yeah.
it was cold. It was awful
Yeah.
cold.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was at a talk by the Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, and he was talking about the different ocean zones of the world. He talked about the South Atlantic as being one area where unsustainable fishing is going on, is really rampant. At the same time, when I came back to Maine, I heard that the Department of Marine Resources had approved to cook vessels to go down to the South Atlantic and harvest Uruguayan Atlantic redfish
Right.
because of the lobster bait crisis. So I
The
was
black belly
surprised.
rose fish, but yeah.
Yeah,
it's the same.
I was surprised because that fishery, these are very long-lived fish, seem to be not a good decision from a fisheries management perspective for the South Atlantic. And then when I came back here, I heard it was the crisis. The crisis was on the front page of the paper, and this was the reason why it was happening. And so now I'm hearing a different story.
Yeah.
They
They did get approval for that fish. My understanding is that it's primarily a bycatch for their fishing vessels. So I'm not sure that they're targeting them or anything different. I'm certainly not going to speak to what Cook does, but because I don't.
How does the Maine Department of Marine Resources determine that there's no biosecurity concerns about that also?
I don't work for DMR, but my understanding is that they check for pathogens and also that it's the same taxonomic classification as redfish, so that automatically gives it some credence for not being an invasive species in our waters. But in terms of their testing, I really can't tell you how extensive that is. I think it's pretty stringent.
So, Maine DMR is the only state currently right now that has regulations on the books that will either allow purposefully for bait to come in or disallow bait to come in. Those regulations are on our website. I am not the contact person for that. However, we do employ a 3-panel volunteer group of experts that will do the literature research process on the applications for may we import this into Maine. It's not a quick process, and that conversation actually has now been presented to the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, so that perhaps other states might also want to consider biosecurity issues for their bait imports.
Jeremy? No.
So I have a kind of off-the-wall question. Whenever I hear this talk about bait fishing, going all over the world to catch bait for lobster, I can't help but think that, we're now in an era where we can go to a grill and order an Impossible Burger. So we've managed to persuade people that they can eat things that taste just like hamburgers but aren't made out of beef. Similarly, in the agricultural world, the feed is changing. We were just talking earlier about using insect-based feeds. Surely the biochemistry of the attractant could be figured out by some smart scientists at the University of Maine. Why are we still trawling the ocean for lobster traps?
So what I can say is that there are people working on this. alternatives. And they have been for years. I've seen people doing tests for alternative baits, and I do know that because of Maine's bait laws, people from the West Coast who have been trying to try out alternative baits on the East Coast have typically gone to New Hampshire because it's not approved in Maine. So there is some give and take there.
It seems like an insane way of touching.
Yeah, I mean, it's old school. I wouldn't necessarily call it insane. I think everything needs to be regulated, but you know, I also think it's fantastic that people are working on bait alternatives and trying out, you know, different methods for convincing them that they want to try a new diet.
Ellie and then Judy.
Thank you. I haven't heard anything since last winter when the legislature and DMR was talking about considering the use of salmon racks from processing for bait. And can you tell us a little bit about where that stands? And also, I guess I don't really understand if there's, I don't know if I'm even saying this right, but genetic implications about using a farm-raised skeletal waste for a wild-caught shellfish.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think the reason that was initially proposed is that there are net pens in the Gulf of Maine, and so the logic was, we're raising these salmon already in the Gulf of Maine, why not use the byproduct to try to catch lobster, which makes sense, except that most aquaculture salmon operations are so big that once they get to the salmon rack stage, they don't have as much control and traceability in terms of being able to say exactly where those fish came from, and that's the biggest issue right now. So I think the hope is that long-term, when we eventually do have land-based salmon operations in the state of Maine, that we could use those racks potentially.
And my understanding was that it wasn't an issue that was brought forward by the net pen industry, but it was brought to us by the RAS people coming into the state. Isn't that correct?
That what issue?
The question to the legislature and to DMR was about using racks, was actually brought to Augusta by the RAS.
My understanding is a rack from Fisherman,
Okay.
but I could be wrong.
Up in Frenchman's Bay early in August, and they were catching bait fish for the first time they claimed in years. And they were in the harbor that were pulling up herring and pulling up pogies. So I think we are seeing more bait fish moving in Penobscot Bay. Now that may be unfair because we see them moving when the seals are under them and they're creating all kinds of ruckus. And that's counter in a way to what you're saying. And I wonder if you were hearing anything about what they were getting this year, that they were getting more bait fish.
Well, I mean, they're restricted by quotas in terms of what they can catch, although we have had some issues with some people going over.
Right, but there is still allowed to be, so within the state of Maine, you can harvest herring in state waters. You still need to have a commercial pelagic license, but you can still harvest in state waters. The only, I guess, downside to that is that when herring are present in state waters, it's typically in like June. End of May, 1st of June is when most of my either fixed gear state harvesters are operating, or a little bit, at the end of June, 1st of July. And then you need to be concerned about river herring, because we do not allow river herring bycatch. So, as I was saying, this, with these last 2 years, this has been the first time that our people have been seeing sardines in nearshore waters. And so there was about a 5-year stretch where there was not even the purpose of getting a water because there were no fish to catch. And so both last summer and this summer, there's been a lot of activity, a lot of renewed activity, you know, all the way down to Jonesports, Steuben, Goldsboro, Winter Harbor. Like, they have been gilding, you know, mostly puppies, but there's still evidence of herring and things being caught in the water.
Why does Virginia 78% of the Menhaden?
Virginia is 78% of the Menhaden based on historical landings of the reduction fishery.
It doesn't hurt that Omega has a big blocking camera.
So you guys,
My question's based mainly on observation and I guess hearsay, but last time I went to Grand Menhaden, the cannery Black Harbor was still in operation. And my understanding had been that that was a sardine cannery. And that there were fishing weirs on the west side of Grand Menhaden, which would indicate to me that sardine fishing was still viable in that area. And someone had also told me that I realized Canadian policies and practices and quotas are very different from those in Maine, but someone had told me that at least on a small scale, salmon were still being fished off of the Maritimes. So I was wondering if anyone can comment on that and what the situation is with some of these fisheries in the Maritimes, especially New Brunswick.
So the weir fishery in New Brunswick?
Well, I mean, are for some reason sardines more abundant over there than they are on the side?
So the amount of fixed gear, so any herring that is landed in New Brunswick that's either done from a fishing weir or stopsing, so a fixed permanent trap, those landings are actually associated with our stopping that come down here because we're considering that whole body of fish to be the same body. So the New Brunswick weir fishery, up and down, looking at the numbers, it's definitely variable year through year. Last year, they landed almost 12,000 metric tons, which was almost 11,000 metric tons more than they did the year before. So it was an unbelievably boom year for the Canadians from the fixed gear perspective. This year, they are under 2,000. And so some of the aspects of the Canadians is that the process of setting up a fishing weir is a lot more permanent than stopsing. So there has been some behavioral, cultural changes in which the captains are choosing to be a little more, I'd say mobile, but even still, stopsing is not a mobile fishing gear. But they're able to tie into what they're seeing in the environment and choosing when they might want to set their net down. But even still, the herring population in Canadian waters is still sort of at a depressed state that we are seeing as well. I am actually from Prince Edward Island, Canada, and so I grew up on a lobster boat in a fishing village with my grandpa, going upset to get on that for mackerel. And I was back home in Canada in February of this past year at DFO, so our Department of Fisheries and Oceans is our NOAA equivalent down here. And those assessments that the Canadians are doing both around Newfoundland, above the Gulf of St. Lawrence, which is where my family is from, and then sort of on either side of New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, they are still seeing lower levels of that spawn and stop biomass. And so the two countries, though, manage very differently and they harvest very differently. And so it's sort of difficult to tie in, generally what might be the reasoning. I sort of just gave multiple reasons all sort of colliding down here, but I think the Canadians, it might be more due to, sort of how they're sort of viewing all of their populations.
Phil? Totally over your question? No, we'll go to you.
people are buying 100 metric tons of herring and it's producing this much in lobster land. I mean, is there a way that you correlate that?
So to my knowledge, we don't actually have an ability to assess what is being purchased from a bait perspective that goes on the traps. Data from the lobster fishery, though, twofold. We have at-sea observing, so we have lobster sea sampling occurring at the state. It's a small sample size, but individuals go out on the boat, they sample a minimum of 200 traps, but if they're out there for a full 8-hour day, then they're sampling upwards of 400, 500 traps of that captain's full gang. And then from that, they're going to assess, we turned over these 400 traps, he put this X pounds of bait on those traps. So there's that little aspect to it. And then from the reporting side, from the harvester perspective, when the harvester does their reporting logs, they will indicate sort of how many traps they're turning over. And I think that within our reporting aspects, there's data boxes that they can fill in as to how much bait they are being sort of going through with their catches. So there are ways to at least get a ballpark.
So we'll stop with Jennifer.
I was just wondering if DMR is doing any analysis for those 5 years of low recruitment, if there were any environmental trends or effort trends that may have contributed to that?
So we don't, as a state agency, have, well, I guess that's wrong. There are multiple areas that we get data, both from the environment, so like from the environment, from the oceanography standpoint of that, and it's also sort of, at the federal level, other surveys. The one thing that we don't do near shore, we used to back in the day, but not recently, is plankton toad or larvae data. So we don't have any aspect of, yes, we have spawning closures, but we don't know what the output is from those spawning closures. We have, obviously, with Narracoots, with the equipment set up at the Bay Harbor Lab, we know what water temperatures are. We know that water temperature is changing in the Gulf of Maine. We know that herring is typically a cold water species. So that's what we do know, but we don't know what the impacts are to herring. I have routinely heard the concept of the notion that herring are a climate change resistant or resilient species. And while that could be an accurate statement, I still question, are their food source impacted? And so if you have a food source that is impacted by climate change, then how can you, the species that is eating those, still be a resilient species to climate change? So there's a lot of unknowns. Besides that, the whole entire complex of herring, with those mixing of stocks, with them being on Georgia's bank, with them being in Maine, with them going up to Canada, we don't know what those fish are doing in their little individual habitats as they're moving throughout their season. So we don't know what their mortality is being experienced from a predator standpoint. Seals, sharks, dogfish, monkfish. There are multiple aspects of a herring's life cycle that we still have a handle on.
So I thank you all for lasting to the end of the day. If you didn't get enough today, we've got 3 more speaker series on Thursday nights. It's in your packet. The discussion continues, and thank you again.
Just one last word. Thank you all for your wonderful questions and all our wonderful speakers. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank the staff of the Penobscot Marine Museum for all the work they do behind the scenes, and especially Cipely Good, our amazing curator, who worked with Judy and Nancy to pull together an incredible day. So thank you so much.